Welcome to another episode of Up To. 9 years ago, Up To started as a live event series showcasing leaders who are as humble as they are successful. The humility piece is extremely important as we identify leaders who can inspire others. We try to focus our interviews on the non-business aspects of their lives. And in doing so, we have found there's a real thirst to explore their hearts and minds in atypical ways. Our host, as always, is Adam Kaufman. And on this episode, we are joined by Carol Melton.
During the first season of the Up To podcast, I had several companies and entrepreneurs approach me about potential partnerships, but I'm really selective before choosing to do something like that. One choice we did make, happily, is to partner with Vivid Front, a full-service digital marketing and website design agency based in Cleveland that works with both local and national brands. They've built their entire client base on referrals, and they've won a lot of awards, including the 2019 Inc. magazine Top 5,000 Fastest Growing Companies, North Coast's Top Places to Work, and several others. They're known for their talent, they're known for their creativity, they're known for their culture, a firm I liked before we agreed to partner together for the show. Check out vividfront.com, or you can email me and I'll introduce you to their dynamic leader, Andrew Spott. Carol Melton is the Chief Executive Officer and founder of Adeft Capital, a venture capital firm advising and investing in early stage and growth companies, as well as other U.S. and international business interests. She is a director on 2 public company boards, JBG Smith on the New York Stock Exchange and The Real on NASDAQ. Carol previously served as a senior executive officer for 2 global media and entertainment companies that all of you have heard of, Time Warner and Viacom. At Time Warner, Carol served as executive vice president of global public policy for about 15 years, and she joined Time Warner from Viacom, another huge business where she served as executive vice president. She's a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, and she serves on the board of directors and as first vice president of the Economic Club of Washington, D.C. She's also a director at Halcyon, this really innovative startup incubator that has a residence program unlike anything I've ever seen. And she is one of the principals of the Summit of Minds, an annual conference held in Chamonix, France, which brings together diverse thinkers from media and business and the science communities and public policy too. My friend received her BA from Wake Forest, her master's from Florida, and a law degree from America. And she's so much more educated than me, and we're so glad she's with us today. Carol, welcome to Up To.
Thank you so much, Adam. It's really an honor to be here, and it's great to see you and follow in the footsteps of so many of some mutual leaders who we know, like Philippe Bourguignon and Jody McClain and Dave Ciccone and many, many others. So
saving the best for last.
Thank you very much.
So what have you been up to? The show is called Up To. What have you been up to?
Well, happily, I think the answer is better than it might have been 15 months ago, and certainly maybe even 3 months ago. I'm fully vaccinated. Good for me.
Awesome.
And
good for all of us.
I'm already back in the world a bit. I've done some traveling. I've had actual face-to-face meetings. Have not been in a large group setting because we are just moving towards that.
You live in Washington, D.C. It's been pretty strict protocol there, yeah.
But at the end of this month, the Kennedy Center is having a Kennedy Center Honors. Okay. The pushed back now into 2021 of the 2020 honors, and that's going to be an outdoor event at the Reach. So looking forward to that. Nice. And that'll be my first time with a larger group of people, all socially distanced still and following protocols. But can't wait to get back to theater and economic club meetings in person. I think we all miss something in the human-to-human contact.
For sure. Have you flown at all yet? Have you been on an airplane?
Yeah, I've been. I went to Los Angeles to see our daughter, who lives out there. Okay. And I've been to Florida. And I'm going to New York this weekend to see our son, who lives up there.
A return to normalcy. I had my mother fly to see us from North Carolina for the first time in a year for Easter, and we're all ready for that. Obviously,
that's wonderful.
Yeah,
that's great.
So you mentioned Florida. You grew up in Florida.
I did,
and you went to law school. Did you early on think that you were going to be an attorney, or talk about a little bit of your early years? Was there a push to do that, or how did that come about?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. I come from a family
Thanks.
of lawyers. My brother is a lawyer. My father was a lawyer, is a lawyer. Was at the time. He passed away in 2015, but he served as a lawyer and then became a state judge. And he was a state judge most of my life as I was growing up in the little town of St. Augustine, Florida. And he was appointed in 1977 by Jimmy Carter. He was the first judicial appointment that Jimmy Carter made onto the federal bench. And so it was a big deal. And he was a federal judge really for most of the rest of his life.
So this is a family business.
It's a family business.
Yeah.
But to your question, I was not going to be a lawyer. I was going to be anything but. And I grew up in a period of time where women weren't expected to do very much, but I was either going to be a lawyer or I was going to be a stewardess. And it goes to what ended up happening. It was that I traveled, but I really wasn't looking to be a lawyer in the traditional sense. And I moved to Washington after getting a master's degree in communications, as you mentioned. And I ended up going to law school. I got a job as a paralegal. And it took me about 3 weeks to figure out I could do whatever the lawyers were doing and get paid a whole lot more. I think I got paid $12,500. So I went to law school. I rolled out of bed. It was pre the times that you obsessed over taking the prep for the exams and all of that sort of thing. So
so when you say you rolled out of bed, you mean you just kind of casually, you didn't even study for the exam?
Yeah, can you even just imagine that?
You're smart.
That I just took the LSATs and and went from there.
That actually relates to a question I wanted to ask you.
Yeah.
Did you know early on that you were gifted? You're modest, so you would never say this, but you were valedictorian in high school. Yeah. So was it obvious that, well, there's some gift I have here, or was that just hard work that led to you then full steam ahead into Washington, D.C., or how early did you know that you might have some gifts?
Yeah, I don't know if I would call them gifts. It was just who I was. And I think I've heard you ask before, and you may ask it later, but are you a natural-born leader? Is it something that you you really worked on?
Can leadership be taught, or is it something innate?
Yeah, and I'm one of those that I think I just came out this way. And also just, I hope, in a humble way, but just super confident. And I was always really comfortable with myself. There's a story that my parents, when I was a baby in a crib, they would just put books in the crib. And I was perfectly happy there with the books. It was sort of a phenomenon in the family. They would say, let's go look at her, because I would just be there and just be perfectly content. I'm as you know, I'm a social person, and we'll talk about it a bit, that the core of all of this whole thing of business and life is relationships. So very much I'm someone who values and appreciates relationships, but just had an inner core and an inner confidence. And throughout, I never saw myself as smarter than other people, but I never made a B until I got to college, and then I made up for it quickly when I was at college.
Things evened out a little bit.
But it was in a small town, and I grew up with just huge support from my family, and in a world I was the youngest in the neighborhood. That may be part of it too. And because I was not intimidated by much. In terms of people, which also comes into play later in my life as well. So I was the kid, and so I was always hanging with the big kids in our neighborhood, and it was an era where you rode your bike at night.
In St.
houses
Augustine.
were unlatched, and so I think that just gave me a confidence throughout. So I was just ready for the world, and I was also just somebody who just loves a project, taking it on, getting it done.
I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist or anthropologist, but I just think it's so fascinating that you're like, I was just confident. But I mean, there's something unusual there that we can't really tell if you're born with it or that drive to become valedictorian. There's no definite answer to that. So I really appreciate your giving us this peek into your youth, but I've never heard of books in the crib.
I hadn't either. And I don't remember that, but that's what they tell me.
It may have had an effect,
It may have had an effect.
We have a lot of young people who contact me. They listen to the show, and they presumably have young kids. So I bet
Yeah.
we're now going to see people putting books into the
There you
crib
go.
so that their
Well, I
child
don't
can be
know.
like Carol Melton.
Yeah, there you go. Give
That's
it a try.
awesome.
But I think it's part of what, again, is a thread throughout on the grades and whatever else. In high school or wherever, that was sort of what you aspired to do. That was how you won. Was grades.
Merit,
And it was
yeah.
merit.
Yeah.
And so I like to win. Jody and I talk about it, and I think she talked about it in her conversation with you. But I think we both like to lead.
Competitive,
We both just want to win. We're happy enough to let somebody else lead if it's somebody who's knows what they're doing and is
Right.
leading. But I think part of that was wanting to win.
So a little more context. So you go to Washington to go to law school, then you
Yeah.
stay in Washington for your first job, I think. Is there somebody early on in your career that really took a chance on you or gave you a break to catapult you into a higher level beyond like what you maybe should have been in that age or
Yeah.
stage of your career?
Yeah, that's an excellent question.
Thanks. You've said that twice
Yeah.
now. Maybe we should keep doing this.
Well, I have to say, I had several men who really, I think the word in 2021 would be sponsored me, but who really saw that there was something there and would help move me along. And in part because I could get the job done. And so if you're a smart
So again, merit.
executive,
Yeah.
you want the people who can get things done. And I happen to be a woman, but I was hired by the chairman of the FCC to be his legal advisor.
Wow.
And so that was a unique opportunity at the highest levels and meetings that he would have with VIPs and senior leaders. And so very early on, I would be in rooms with high-level people and just saw it as normal.
It was normal for you, but it was very unusual.
It was normal for me,
Yeah.
and so that just was part of what I did. I had my first child while I was. It was before I joined the FCC, so I had a baby in a crib when I was the chairman's legal advisor, and then after that, he retired from being from that role, and I was hired by a little company called Warner Communications, which famously, of course,
Yeah,
I had another child.
we'll get into
I had
that.
baby number 2, but it was when I moved to that there were another series of people, chief executives, who moved me along, and we can talk about
Right.
time in Warner, because that was really what made my career, was having the opportunity to be at the table. It ages me, but to have been in the room with a handful of people as that merger was put together.
Let's talk about your portfolio of work at Time Warner, because that's the years when I got to know you.
Yeah.
Is that one of the pinnacles? You have several in your career, but what was the scope of your work when you
Yeah.
were in charge of different countries and
Sure.
you had offices all over the
Yeah.
place at Time
Yeah.
Warner? Can you give a little snapshot of what that was like about 5 or 6 years ago?
Yeah. So that was later in my career. I actually, when I did that initial merger, I spent 10 years as Washington counsel. So I'd come out of the FCC. And when you're putting two companies together who are highly regulated and have FCC licenses, you need to actually get those licenses transferred to the new company. And so I was the person in the room. I was just out of the FCC. I knew everybody, and I was a lawyer. I knew how to get it done. So I spent 10 years there at Time Warner as the person getting things done at the FCC. And we bought, during that period of time, we bought CNN. So I took TED. I mean, I got stories on stories, which you won't
We
get
like
into
stories.
today.
No, you threw out that line.
but-
Give us a Ted Turner story.
I took Ted Turner around the FCC back in the day,
Wow.
and some of them are they're fun stories. But it's just it is like. Probably many of your listeners don't know who Ted Turner was, but back in those days, he was Captain America. I mean, he won
Won the
yachting,
America's Cup for America,
won the America's
largest
Cup.
landowner in the U.S.
And he built CNN into this powerhouse, and he was just a larger-than-life guy. He would be maybe the equivalent of like an Elon Musk
Yes.
of that
A visionary
era. A
in
visionary.
multiple
And-
industries.
Yeah,
and
and
so,
you'd take him around Washington, and people would just
so you were
taxi
acquiring
drivers would go,
something
"Hey,
with him
Ted."
right now, or what was happening in this scenario that you're picturing?
We were buying. The company was buying Turner.
Time Warner was buying Turner.
So I had that opportunity to take Ted around him. It was that level of responsibility I had as a youngster. So I was young. I was early 30s with a baby in a crib when I was at the table doing the Time and Warner merger. And that's when Steve Ross, legendary chairman of Warner, really tapped me to get things done. And there were a couple of us made, but I was the first woman vice president at Time Warner alongside another woman.
Wow.
And so anyway, I was there for 10 years and then went to Viacom. Then we bought Turner, and then I got the opportunity. I'd been the number 2 person in the Washington office for Time Warner, and then went to Viacom where...
And is Viacom at that point a CBS deal, or is that pre-CBS?
So Viacom was owned by a single majority shareholder, a fellow named Sumner Redstone, which some people may remember.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, phew, I'm out of all this regulatory thing. We got one owner. I'm kind of done with that, because we'd had a lot of acquisitions and changes when I was at Time Warner initially. And sure enough, 1 year in, we found out that Sumner wanted to buy CBS. So then it was on my plate to get that deal done as well, which also required regulatory approval and a number of different things that aren't worth talking about now. But we closed that, I want to say, in 2000, and then I took over both offices. So I ran the offices for both. There was a CBS office that was folded in, and then I ran all of public policy for Viacom and CBS. And some of your listeners might wonder, what is public policy? What does that even mean? And it means really the interactions with government, whether it's in Washington. You asked about globally, and I'm getting to global because, in fact, my job was really not global so much until I got to Viacom CBS and then later in my career.
I want to interrupt you, if I might, because you're talking about these things casually, like, oh, we bought Turner or we're buying CBS, and I had to do that. Like, I have trouble deciding at Costco, should I get like this flavored water or this San Pellegrino? Like, these are major transactions that you just knew how to do.
Yeah.
That's
I mean, I look
very
back
unusual.
on all of this, and I was and those days I was a kid. I mean, I was early 30s when I was doing some of these, and I was later 30s maybe. I can't remember exactly when Turner would have been, but buying Turner.
Did you ever think like
CNN.
whether it was then or fast forward a few years and I'm in your office and we're overlooking the White House, did you ever think like, how am I the person, how am I the one doing this deal with Turner, or why am I having the best office in Washington, D.C. with this looking at the White?
It really was a fantastic office.
Yeah.
So we had some great inaugural events there, and it was so fun to have you and your family come to one of those.
But did you ever like wonder, like, how did I get here, or are they ever going to realize I'm not qualified? Did you ever doubt yourself? I know you're confident, but did you ever have any kind of inner nervousness?
I don't want to come across like a jerk, but
no, it's good.
I did not have that imposter syndrome thing. I know we talk about it, and I know it's a thing.
No, but I love your authenticity.
And I respect that it is real, and I empathize, and I understand that it can be real. But I honestly felt that as I never had an intention to end up where I did, so I'll now have young people say to me, gee, I'd like to be I'd like to do that when I grow up. And I didn't plan to do this, but one thing sort of led to another. And by the time I was that person in the room, I knew I was the best person to do this job. And so I was highly confident in what I did. And along the way, when we'll get to, we think about sort of, I think young people are told now, be passionate, like find your passion. And I honestly can say public policy was not a passion for me, but what it became, I didn't even know what public policy was. People would say, oh, you ought to do a policy job. And that's different from being a lawyer, where a lawyer sometimes, where you're handed a problem, two people are clashing over something, and you're asked to help with the litigation on that or in some way to resolve it. Policy is different. How should we shape laws to be what we need them to be? And so that's what people say, oh, you ought to do policy. And I honestly, one day I went and looked up, like, what's policy?
What a blessing, though, to have a role in that.
Yeah. And so what I realized, I get this, and I live in Washington, and it's fun. I was in a law firm, and it was great for the 3 years that I was there. But it was not, I couldn't see myself aspiring to be a partner in a law firm. I was going to be taking what was a circle and trying to jam it into a square.
Carol,
so I knew it's not finding the passion for me, it's finding what I was good at. And I knew I wasn't good. I was never going to be a great lawyer. I'm not. There are lots of things. I'm really bad at sitting in long meetings. I want to be the person that you hand the ball to and who gets to say, come on, guys, this is where we're going. And so when you're talking about making decisions, I'm really good at making decisions. I love making decisions. I love knotty problems. I love solving things. And I'm very good at, if it doesn't work, then I pivot. And so so long as you've got your health and look, I come from a place of privilege. I come from a place of, I had no money. So it isn't money privilege. It's just I had opportunities based on, I had loving parents, grew up in a small town. I had the opportunity to come to Washington, and I was grateful for what I had then. I'm grateful for what I've got now, and I saw it as not so much a responsibility, but just this is what I was good at. And this is what I could do have fun at it.
I don't think it is all a problem that you don't feel like you had the imposter syndrome. I think that, it's refreshing to hear that you had some confidence.
Yeah.
Because I think often people who lack confidence want to know how to get it.
Yeah.
And so I think even your words right now are helping better understand how we can feel better about something we're good at. We're meant to be in this spot.
Yeah.
My last role, I did well. That's why I'm being asked to be in this room now.
Precisely.
And you kind of just took that and took it to the next level each step of the way.
Yeah.
I can see that.
Yeah. No, and each step of the way, I think we don't listen enough to our instincts. I think when I've gone awry, it's that when I've listened to other people, and it isn't that I'm not open to other people's ideas. I think another strength is connecting ideas, connecting people, being aware of what's in the room. I can read a room really well. I can see around corners a bit. And part of that is, I think, being conscious of facts and data points. But in the end, you've got to make a decision based on the facts you got. Rarely do you have a perfect set of facts. Rarely do you know absolutely something is going to work.
You can't ever know enough.
You can't ever know enough.
I love over-preparing because it makes the day of the moment less stressful, for sure.
And I do too.
Yeah.
So another one of my mentors along the way, and the man who was hugely seminal in my life, is a guy named Jack Valenti.
Oh, legend.
Who was legendary,
Jack Valenti. Wow.
Head of the Motion Picture Association, really created it into the organization that it became. And he was, we became very close. And I watched Jack again and again. We'd be on an airplane out to the West Coast for some meeting with studio heads. And I would be wanting to watch a film or just veg out because it was my moment away from kids. There was nothing better. I love my kids.
Yeah.
But it was downtime to be able just to decompress from a busy job and a busy life. And I would look over across the plane and there would be Jack. And Jack would work the whole time. And Jack, it's part of the privilege that I've had of being in the room with people who are front page news. And they're, honestly, it's just like you and me. And everybody's got insecurities in their way. And Jack just worked harder than anybody practically I've ever known. And then Jack would stand up. We'd go to an event, and Jack would be the featured person speaking. He would stand up, and it would be completely effortless, as if it were just rolling off his tongue, off the top of his head. And I knew, because we talked about it.
He prepared.
And he's written a book. He wrote a book called Speak Up with Confidence. But part of that is just he prepared and he prepared and he prepared. And I think it's what you're saying that you do. It's what I do again and again. And when you've prepared, then you feel very comfortable in what you're doing. And then it's following your instinct. It's really knowing enough.
You could be a
to put it
podcast
together.
host. What you just describes a lot of being a podcast host. You got to prepare, but then you got to go with your instincts and know when to. I just interrupted you, which I probably shouldn't have, but it's like part instinct or part back and forth. So you'd be great at that.
Interrupt all you want.
You've mentioned, Carol, You've mentioned a few character traits of yours which you felt were your strengths: inclination to prepare, self-confidence, hardworking. During this rise, were there ever
Need to win.
Yeah, competitive. If there was ever a character trait you felt like you needed to work on, I was talking to someone else recently to give you some context who he was a medical doctor by training and very accomplished, top medical school, but he thought he lacked empathy. Yeah. And he was being honest with himself. So he really worked on how he could be more empathetic. Yeah. You're empathetic. That wouldn't be yours. You're not allowed to answer empathetic. But were there ever any skills or traits that you felt like you needed to work on as you were getting invited into more and more important rooms? Yeah. What were those?
So a key one, and I still have to work on it because I'm such a take charge person, it's listening. And I'm going to mention another great person in my life, and that's Dick Parsons. And we keep using the word legendary. Yeah. Dick Parsons, just an incredible person. I can't tell you the countless people that I see. I saw back then when I was working for Dick. He's who brought me back to Time Warner.
And he was a good listener?
He was a good listener, but what he said to me, it was in corporate America, you have these performance reviews. And my very first one with Dick, I went in and I was, all prepared. I had my little notebook and things. And I went in and Dick would always be, and I would be, the hard-charging person. And Dick is one of those guys. I think about Dick and I think about Maya Angelou's quote of, people won't remember what you said and they won't remember what you did, but they'll remember how you made them feel. And Dick Parsons is one of those people that you just remember how he made you feel. And I'd come into his office and there would be days when something would just be falling apart. And I needed to tell Dick and I needed to get his advice and just let him know something was going on. And he would immediately assess this, and he would take me over to he had a gorgeous view of Central Park, and he would have some orchids there in tall vases, and we'd go over, and he would just suddenly bring me over there, and we'd stand there, and I'd be dying to tell him, but this was Dick, and taking his beat. And we'd kind of look at the flowers, and then we'd turn around.
Cadence between the two of you, yeah.
There was real cadence to it. And my review was 4 words: talk less, listen more.
Wow.
And that was it.
How was that
talk
received?
Talk less, listen more.
Like in the first moment, were you afraid to even talk? Like, okay, do I talk now or digest it?
Yeah. But it was an important...
But you already respected him so much that meant a lot coming from him.
He could have told me anything. He could have said, go jump out the window, and I might have thought about it. But
so listening was something you felt like I need to...
Yeah. And I think and maybe this is a trait, and I don't want to get into sort of a woman's trait or men, but I think you often do work, you feel like you have to be more serious, and you have to, I can remember when I was starting out in my career of wearing the blouses that, tied at the neck, and you'd dress like a man, you'd put on a suit, and you would maybe some of the things I overdid was overcompensating.
Yeah, I call that the pendulum effect. You didn't want to be here, so you went too much over on this side.
And I think we all did. Yeah. I mean, women dressed a certain way in the 80s.
I don't want to be more serious. I have smiley faces on my to remind myself to smile more.
I'm a big emoji
I need to be
user.
less serious.
Yeah. But I think that was part of me, wanting. Dick had brought me back into this important role, and he brought me back because I was the person for the job. It was one of the things I wanted to be sure to talk about today, which I'm going to put in right here, because there was no bigger moment for what I call serendipity. Some people call it luck.
What's your Italian word, though, for serendipity? I love that.
That's a different word. That's sprezzatura. And that's the one. That goes back to Jack Valenti.
Sprezzatura.
And it goes back to people working very, very hard. And then when you see them, it was the courtiers back in the day in Italy, where when they would work on their features and their hair and whatever else, and then you saw them and it looked like
So
this
natural.
whole thing, very natural, very.
But they
I
work
didn't. I
ahead of
just
time.
got up. I didn't do a thing.
Kind of like the grunge look in the 90s. People would try to look messy with flannel and
Well, they
scruff.
still do in 2021.
But they're working at it, though.
Yeah, they're working at it,
Yeah.
and that happens now as well.
Right.
So that's sprezzatura. It's a great word.
I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So
My word though is serendipity, and the night that we announced that we were splitting up Viacom and CBS, and I had the opportunity to go with Viacom with Tom Freston at the time, or CBS with another CEO, and I happened to be walking. First time in 8 years I'd been to an event for my old company, Time Warner. I hadn't seen Dick Parsons probably in 7 or 8 years. And that night he stood at the bottom of the stairs. Those of you in listening who know the National Gallery in the East Wing, there's stairs that go down, and Dick waited for me at the bottom of the stairs. And the hottest job in Washington at the time was to be the head of the Time Warner office. The job was open, and Dick waited for me at the bottom of the stairs and said, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "Well, I might do this, I might do that." And he said, "Well, how about door number 3? And it was a job that it was a lot of guys in town wanted that job, and it was a matter of right place, right time, and Dick knew what he was getting in me.
was that after or before the listen more comment?
That was before. So that was when he was hiring me.
Okay.
So, but we were circling back to things that happen,
that catapulted you a little bit.
And leadership, things that make you a leader. And I don't want to discount luck and serendipity.
And he took a chance on you.
Big part, yeah. But it was
I
a
think
very
it's
calculated
merit-based.
chance.
Like you just said, he knew what he was getting in you. And I like also what you said about listening, because I feel I'm in the relationship business myself.
Yeah, we all are.
I feel like there are 4 points of relationship equity, what I call relationship equity. I'm not going to go through all of them now, but one of them is listen better.
Yeah.
Not just you, but everyone.
Yeah.
I feel whatever level of listener we are, we could take it to another level.
Definitely.
I love how authentic you were just now, because when I ask people, do you think you're a good listener? Everyone says yes. You're like the first person to say no, but I love how genuine you're being about that.
Well, I mean, it's real. And I think it's part of who another hallmark is just I kind of know. I don't know if I know every one of my weaknesses, but I'm quite conscious of what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. And so I've honed it down to I do the stuff I'm good at, and the stuff I'm not as good at, I let somebody else do it.
How did you decide to try to become a better listener? Was there any like little tools in the toolbox, or you just try to remember, listen more, talk less?
It's the toolbox.
Was that it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's the toolbox.
Yeah.
It's the same toolbox that one of my epiphanies in more recent years when I was working for Time Warner and just in life, family, husband, kids, whatever, was that so much of our limitations are in our own heads, not only for ourselves, but I began to realize when we think about other people, we're thinking, and I know you read that people, and particularly young people, he was looking at me the wrong way, what did I say wrong? Or gee, I wore the wrong outfit. And once you realize most people aren't thinking about you. They're really thinking about themselves. It's hugely powerful. It's powerful in negotiations.
It's a relief. The sooner you realize that, it's a relief.
It's a relief, and it helps you not worry so much about what other people think. I don't want to say that I didn't worry before, but you even more begin to listen to that inner compass and who you are and authenticity of yourself.
That helps in everything.
Yeah, it really helps.
My wife, I think is a yoga instructor.
Yeah.
And I often say, I don't want to go. I'm so bad. People are going to laugh at me.
Yeah.
The sooner I accept that no one cares what I'm doing. So this belief of yours really is applicable in all walks of life, really.
Yeah, and I think I started on that topic by the toolbox, because that's probably the thing that is a more recent epiphany, which is the toolbox on that one is simply when I can feel myself. It's so much in life when you become conscious, when you become mindful, it's like physically when you feel your body doing something. I mentally can feel when I'm letting my brain get infected with or have somebody else making me feel insecure is maybe the wrong word, but making
unneeded worry.
Unneeded worry. That's a great word. I love that, unneeded worry, because so much of it is just pointless worry, right? Pointless worry.
Right.
And so I've gotten really better about getting rid of pointless
Shutting that out, yeah.
worry. I love those two words. I'm going to remember that.
Feel free to use
pointless
it.
worry.
When you host a podcast,
but
which
the
I think you're
toolbox
going to.
is, it is just saying, stop it. So on the listening more, to circle back to that, it's stop it.
Turning it off, yeah. Turn down the volume on that.
And it's not as easy. I'm making it sound like, oh, okay, then she just stops it. Or, oh, okay, then she stops worrying about other people. It's not that easy, just like meditation. You can sit there for 2 minutes and 5 minutes and 10 minutes, and there's all this stuff floating through your brain. It's just like everything else. But the more you work at it, the more conscious you become, and the more you can try to get rid of it.
Well, we all have things that we want to improve upon. So this is really enlightening how you've tried to deal with that wise advice that one of your mentors, Mr. Parsons, told you so many years earlier. I don't know how you did it, Carol, but you had your kids here in Washington. I know for a fact that you would fly to LA for a meeting and then fly home. And you had an office in New York City. Yeah. Family as coworkers as family. Is that even possible, the balance? Or for me, I'm always working, but I'm trying to have fun while I'm working, and I'm always having fun and I'm thinking about work. So I kind of do all of it at all times. I don't know that that's right, but how did you do all that?
I think people put a lot of pressure on themselves for this work-life balance.
Yeah.
And in fact, it is all the same. And I think you've just hit the nail on the head, too, is that it is part of the same. And that it is very normal that you feel that the people who you're spending the most time with, which often is those people at work.
You're right.
And that's where there's just a lot of drama and a lot of emotion that happens every day. When I talked about that it's just business, it is business, but it is, all of this is relationships, all of this is people, all of this is skills at how to manage through relationships. And I think if we think about that, a lot of what these relationships are, it's in your own head. So when you begin to free yourself up from that thought of trying to either please other people or do what you think other people want you to do, because you may have it dead wrong. And so the separation, I think these people are your family. And your family at home. And it's, you are going to wake up, if you're good at what you're doing, you are going to wake up at 3 a.m. and have some brainstorm, have an idea.
Solve or,
so I think that's part of it.
So it's good to give ourselves license to think about work at home and think about home while you're working.
It's okay.
Yeah.
I think we put and men and women, and particularly the next generations, we talk so much about work-life balance, and I get this question all the time. You get this question all the time. You do the best you can, and it really. I want to go back to something that my father said, and we lost him as I think I mentioned in 2015, And when we talked to people after his death, we had it person after person after person talked about what a good man he was and what influence he had. And the thing that my father would say to them, and that we ended up inscribing at his grave, was that he did his very best. And I think if we all we do the best we can, and we cut ourselves some slack, and we at the end of the day, we've done our best. And that's all you can ask of us.
This coming from you, like a high achiever, excellent professional, engaged at home human being, this means a lot, cutting ourselves some slack, because from the outside, people might think, wow, she really has a lot going on. How does she do it all? So
it was a mess. A lot of times it was just it was just a mess, but it was never a mess. I knew that I wanted to work. I knew it was I had to work. It wasn't for it. I mean, it was great to make money, and certainly we used that for the family resources. But I needed to work. I needed to achieve.
Part
I needed
of who
to
you
make
are,
a mark.
fulfilling.
We all want to matter, right?
Right.
And for me, it's part of all of this. Is we all want to matter. And when you realize the other person, that person just wants to be seen. The person wants to be heard. The person wants to be
mattered.
To matter. So when you go to that, it is part of this whole seamless thing of life and work.
I'm grateful that Calfee, Halter, and Griswold has once again agreed to partner with us. With offices in Ohio and Washington, D.C., this full-service national law firm focuses on all aspects of business and the law, including corporate and finance, intellectual property, and government relations. Let me be clear. I actually approach companies with whom I would like to partner. We just don't accept marketing dollars from anyone. I have been referring my CEO and entrepreneur friends to Calfee for years. I really believe in the firm. One of their notable practice areas is in mergers and acquisitions. And recently, for instance, I introduced a successful entrepreneur in the Midwest to Calfee when he told me that a European-based conglomerate wanted to buy his business. Calfee works with large corporations as well as privately held companies throughout the U.S. and Canada and in Europe and Asia too. So whether it's selling your own business or the more routine needs of creating your first will or anything in between, this firm can really do it all in terms of legal needs. Once again, the firm is Calfee, Halter, and Griswold, and you can find them at calfee.com or on the Up2 Foundation website. So let's fast forward a little bit, Carol. Time Warner is acquired by AT&T, and now you're at this point where a few years ago you need to decide, what do I want to do next with my life? You're way too young to be retired. So before we get into what you do now, how did you go about deciding how you wanted to spend that next season of your life? Did you talk to other mentors? Did you read a lot about interesting industries? Like, how did you even put that little recipe together before you created the meal?
Yeah. So I looked back at what I really enjoyed most about my life. And of course, it's travel. And I can get travel personally as well. Recreationally.
Yeah.
But I love travel and I loved people. I love putting things together. But most importantly, to where I went, I love disruption. One of my most fun things that I did at Time Warner was when HBO, it seems archaic now, but when HBO was trying to figure out how to take its linear programming and turn it into streaming programming and take it off of what was traditional cable and turn it into, I think it's been HBO Go, HBO Now, various iterations. But that was one of the most fun points in time.
That was so nouveau. Like, I could get HBO by itself without a big block of different programs, $5 or whatever it was.
And that was one of the most fun things I did. And so it was thinking about, all right, what I really like is solving things. And I like disruption. And I like looking at the world a different way. I like that blue sky space. And I like the people who are thinking that way. And I also had two young, they were 20-something by then. And so I was enamored by the next generations
So what
of
your kids were
thinkers.
Exposed to, like in their...
Yeah, I mean, one is an entrepreneur. The other went to Wharton Business School, and she worked for Comcast NBCU and now works for YouTube doing marketing for
So they were
YouTube.
Also maybe stimulating with some new ideas, some new possibilities.
Absolutely.
That's nice.
And I was learning from my kids, loving this next generations of how they were looking at the world. And so I started talking to, not taking the traditional route from what a job like mine would lead to, which is go to a think tank in Washington, do public policy. I was sort of done with public policy. That was then. What do I do that keeps me creative and keeps me learning new things and meeting new people?
Okay.
So I started talking to some friends around town and who were in the investment business. And one of the guys who was with a well-known firm in town said, well, why don't you talk to someone we have who does due diligence for us, and you could think about investing alongside us when we're doing private investing, not for the company itself, but getting involved in some of these new startups.
That was so nice of David to do that for you.
It really was. So
We're joking, but the
yes.
Carlyle Group is such a renowned organization
Yeah.
that I felt it's okay to compliment them and you by saying you're learning from some sharp people about how to jump into this new world of investing. And I think you like the space economy. We both have fondness for that now.
Absolutely. So I did start doing that investing. And it opened up a whole new world for me. So while I somewhat maintained my hand into the media world, people say to me, well, are you investing in media this and media that? And it's like, no, not really.
Been there, done
anything
that.
but media. Because, as we know, a lot of the early media startups didn't pan out. And so I began to listen to smart people who knew what they were doing. And I found again that those good old instincts started to come into play. And so
You're saying some of this so fast.
Yeah.
I want to interrupt here.
I'm talking too much.
Well, to underline, it's a key
Listen
point,
more.
though. But you said I was listening to smart people.
Yeah.
Like, that sounds obvious, maybe, but a lot of people don't do that. They just want to go their own way because you already had success in your life, so you now know what's best for you. But no, you were honest enough with yourself to know, why don't I talk to some other sharp people who are more veteran of this new industry I'm jumping into? So I just wanted to underline that because I think we all could do that more often.
I do, and there are people who you read about that they make a list of individuals,
Right.
and they go out and introduce themselves.
Right. I do
to
that
them,
every
and
year. I don't do New Year's resolutions.
You're one of those people. Yeah.
Thanks. But I think you were on this list one year. But every year I list 10 people I want to get to know better in the year ahead.
Yeah.
And some might be for personal reasons. Some might be for professional reasons. Some maybe I've already met the person, but just getting to know the person better. And I think like 6 years ago, you and I did a walk in Chamonix, France, and I'm like, I want to get to know that person better. But now, I wasn't even planning on saying this, but I'm proud of you because we're talking about this new season of your life right now.
Yeah.
But I'm now remembering that years ago you said, I want to start meeting new people in different industries. I want to expand my network. I don't even know if you remember saying that to me, but you said that like 5 or 6 years ago. And look how many different people now you're personally and professionally interacting with. You've done that.
I've done that.
Congrats.
Thank you.
And now more people want to meet with you.
Well, thank you. And I do feel quite proud of having made this transition because now I think of myself as doing venture capital. I don't think of myself as being
A media
former
executive,
this and that. And I'm actually quite, certainly when I get introduced, we talk about my background. And it's important underpinning for what I am now. But it is also, that's what I was, and this is what I am.
Yeah.
So I will actually say, don't introduce me as former. What I am is now doing venture capital.
I started with Adeft Capital today. I hope that was okay.
That was
I didn't
exactly
say she
right.
used to be.
You got it just right.
What is the name, Adeft? Tell me what that name means.
So
Adeft, I
Adeft
love
is a
it.
fun name. Whenever you start a business, any of you listening who know that, every god and goddess is taken. Every street you ever grew up on, your
Even
dogs,
Latin words are cool words now.
Every Greek word, you name it, they're all taken. So then you start to, as you're reading or listening, you start to listen for unique and interesting words. And I heard this word, I forget where, or maybe saw it written, but I saw the word adeft, and I thought, well, that's interesting. And it's a combination of deft and adept. So I went to the internet, as we do for everything, right? The font of all wisdom. I went to the internet, and there's something called the Urban Dictionary out there.
Oh, yeah.
And I looked it up, and I'll be darned. It actually is
available.
a word in the Urban Dictionary, and it means, it's a gamer term.
Yes.
And it means a skilled player of the game. And I thought, that's really good, because it goes to also, I think, one of the other things. When I'm asked to speak to women's groups, there are many times when you hear, and this is men and women, but many times you hear that this problem came and it was just so intimidating and I didn't know what to do. I got overwhelmed. And one of the things that I always did was, in my mind, I turned it into a game. And so it's when you begin to look at things, because again, going to health is a whole different ballgame. But if everybody's healthy, if it's just a business problem, it's just a business problem.
Good perspective.
And so then, therefore, it's not, most of this, as we've talked about, it's not personal, because mostly the guy or the woman, they're thinking about themselves. They're not thinking about you. So once you realize that, you realize, all right, so this is just another problem to solve. And to make it less intimidating and to make it more interesting is it's a game. And so when I thought about it, again, kind of serendipity, but it is meaningful.
It's perfect
Glad
for you,
you
Adeft.
asked.
No, it's perfect for you. It really is.
Because it is a perfect name for sort of where I am now. So it really is. And thank you for remembering that conversation that we had, because then I don't want to act like I just woke up one day, because a lot of people are going through transitions right now. It takes work. And so
You're very
this probably
purposeful.
took, I'm very purposeful, and this took a couple of years to really feel where I am now. We announced that we were selling Time Warner to AT&T in 2016. Famously, it took a couple of years to get it done. So through all that period of time, though, I was being intentional. I was being deliberate. And I think that's one of the other words that we need to emphasize here, because I think oftentimes, particularly in this Instagram world, where people—
Too fast.
It gets posted. You know, there's this lovely scene and everybody's happy and every marriage is great and all children are wonderful.
I read
And we
today,
know—
Carol, excuse
Yeah.
me, that going too fast. 60% of all the retweets on Twitter,
Yeah.
the person hasn't even read the link that they're retweeting. 60%. They
And
just
you can tell.
They like the headline or something
Yeah.
like that. That was just in today's Wall Street Journal.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe that. So
Yeah.
you're the opposite. You were intentional. You spent some years trying to expand your professional network. So maybe a little bit of a lightning round now.
Yeah.
What are you most excited about professionally or personally? Like, how do you decide what to jump into and what not to? Some people have personal mission statements.
Yeah.
Some have buckets of goals. People like you who are so successful, I'm always interested in knowing, how do you decide when to say no? I'm sure you're stimulated with a ton of opportunities,
Yeah.
but how do you filter through that?
So I'm really good at saying no.
Okay.
And I try to do it with grace and understanding where the other person is coming from. But I also am very good at knowing that that's not something I'm going to be very good at, and really good at knowing that's really solving that guy's problem, but it's not really advancing the ball for me. And so you begin to realize, and this was something I've done for a long, long time, but appreciating, because there were times I said yes, we all do it. And then you go, oh, how did I get myself into this? So it really, again, is being intentional. And I now know myself. And I've known, it's a hallmark again, I keep using that word, but I kind of know myself enough to know this is what I'm good at, this is what I'm not good at. I know now also I get bored quickly with things that are not ones that are stimulating. So now I'm pretty good at ferreting out those things that are going to be worth my time.
That's a talent.
It's a talent. And it also, because there will be other people who can do, there are other people who love chairing a gala. There are other people who really want to do, we'd be on a particular board. They want to do that pro bono board. So let that person do it. And thank you very much. I really appreciate
we need those people.
that you asked me. But I know in my heart there's going to be somebody else who's better at doing that. I'm going to be really good at this because this is what I do. And so as I got the board opportunities that I did, they were ones that I thought would expand my information, my knowledge.
And you could
expand
offer
the people.
value.
Yeah.
Provide some
Yeah.
help to the
Yeah.
companies.
So I prioritize, I'm going to use the word privilege again, but I really, or the luxury actually, the gift of being able to plot out my own days,
That
weeks,
is a
months.
gift. That is.
It is, and I'm very mindful how lucky I am to be able to do that. And so I don't want to use the word responsibility because that makes it sound like, oh, I'm so important and, I need to do this or, I'm responsible for this. But I'm grateful in a way that I realize that I do have an opportunity to say yes to some things where I can add value.
Well,
So
I'm grateful you said yes to this program. I mean, I know that you're offered a lot of different opportunities, so thanks for saying yes to the show.
Well, it's just been a pleasure. It's always a pleasure talking to you, Adam, and I hope that we get a chance this September to walk in Chamonix again.
Oh, that'd be great. We've done that 5 times. I hope it'll be open up for us Americans. My last question for you today, Carol, is thinking about, and I felt like I watched a movie scene the way you described Mr. Parsons taking you to the window and overlooking Central Park. Do you ever think about who is watching you now, or who you're having an impact on the way he had that on you? Like years from now, who's going to be telling stories? And it doesn't have to be specific people, but like types of people that you're really trying to mentor or provide leadership for. Do you think about that at all?
Yeah, I definitely do. And I'm going to talk about a person here that is going to be, Oprah. Like, why would you bring up Oprah? But I bring it up about Oprah the business person and Oprah the leader. And David Rubenstein of the Carlyle Group and also chair of the Economic Club wrote a book 2 years ago called How to Lead.
He hosts my second favorite podcast, by the way. It's a really good show.
Yeah.
No, he hosts...
the show, of course.
Is my second favorite podcast.
Well, yeah. I mean, he next to you, he's a darn fine interviewer. He's terrific at that. But he published this book, and Oprah Winfrey, at the beginning of each chapter, there's a quote from that interview. And what has stuck with me more than anything is the quote from Oprah Winfrey, and I'm going to paraphrase it here because it's hard to remember it exactly. But she said, your legacy is really the life that you're leading. It's really what you do every day. And we all know that Oprah's done these like huge philanthropic things. She's given millions to this and that. She has her school in Africa. But what she said, and this would have been in 2018, 19, whenever David did this interview, was that she said, I realize that we all think that it's these big philanthropic things that we do that are going to be the legacy that we leave. But in fact, it's what we're doing every day, and it's how we live our lives to shine a light for someone else. Wow, right?
I love that.
And so when I think about my life, I absolutely think about the generation that comes behind, because when I was coming up, I thought that by 2021 that we would have solved a lot of these things for women. Women were going to be everywhere in the workplace. Women were going to be running things. And we've accomplished a lot of that in our society, but we still have a lot more to do.
A long way to go.
A long way to go. And so I'm very mindful of being someone who's been married 37 years to the same guy, and having two great children in their 30s who are both accomplished and just wonderful people, kind, smart, terrific people, that you can do this, because I think so much for women and people that you just want to give up along the way, that it's just too much. And I want to be that person who, and my husband was a litigator, by the way, who also was a very busy guy. And so that you can do this, and it really is a matter of one foot in front of the other,
I like
and
Oprah's
you can get there.
Legacy, not challenge, but kind of direction, because that means anyone can create the legacy.
Absolutely.
One doesn't have to be the billionaire who endows programs in Africa, but in your own life, we all can be having that impact. And Carol, you have an impact around more people than I think you realize. Anyone I know who knows you just speaks the world of you, and you've graced us with your presence today. I cannot believe how fast this hour went, but thank you for sharing some of your story with us today. There's a lot to talk about, so thank you for being on the Up To podcast.
Thanks, Adam. It's truly been a pleasure and honor and a lot of fun.
Thank you for listening to the Up To podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe via your podcast platform of choice. To receive our newsletter, suggest speakers, and give your candid feedback, please email Adam directly at adam@uptofoundation.org. We would love to hear from you. The Up To podcast is produced by the BL Media Group, right outside of the nation's capital in Washington, D.C. See you next time.